So today I felt that this would be a good opportunity for us to discuss a little bit about our place in this mad world. That's one of the issues that some of you have brought up in the past, as well as our inner dialogue and how we can utilize our awareness of our place in this mad world in order for us to live and be aware of our highest consciousness. So I'd like to start today, and I haven't done this very often. What I'd like to do today is I'd like to start from the top down. I know that sounds very political, but sometimes it works a little bit better when it comes to consciousness. A lot of times we refer to we seem to be aware of our lives on our own personal level, but if we were perhaps to look at it from a universal level, slowly going down the levels of awareness to this daily waking consciousness, perhaps it may help us a little bit with what I'm intending to get across today. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to read chapter 2, or I should say passage 2 from the Book of One. The new edition is out. And number 2 is the One. We are all part of one soul. Our souls are pieces of the one main soul, the source of all creation. You may call it God if you wish. Within our souls is everything God is, and so are our ultimate capabilities, all that is God's. We are able to achieve perfect goodness, and we are able to achieve perfect evil. Free will gives us the choice of which path to follow. Good brings happiness, and evil brings sorrow. Now, I know that's very generalized, so we're going to break that down a little bit. When I was honored enough or blessed enough to go through the experience of that shamanic vision quest I did back in 1992, and I've been lucky enough to achieve that state of awareness maybe 2 more times in my lifetime, but when I was at that state of, let's say, that complete oneness, maybe some of you have experienced that, but as I transcended my identity, my story, as I transcended the labels and, how shall we say, rational thinking or linear logical thinking, I was lifted or pulled into or became aware of this big golden ball of light. I'm sure many of you have heard this story from me perhaps in the past, but as I was in that golden ball of light, I felt, that whole complete oneness. I felt at peace with everything. I felt an awareness of every single being, not only on the planet, but within the entire universe, and I felt connected to every single thing. And that is still a possibility within these fleeting glimpses of full conscious awareness, or samadhi, or nirvana, or whatever it is that you wish to call it. But as I was beginning to return back to my physical form, I remember seeing these pieces of that golden ball of light returning to Earth, and as well little pieces of that golden ball of light returning from the Earth back to that original big ball of golden light that I'm talking about. And it was my understanding that these were souls incarnating into another level of consciousness, another plane of existence, another plane of reality, if you wish to call it that. And it was at that moment that I understood that we are all one. We are all part of one soul. We are merely fragments of that oneness. Within us is that infinite oneness, that infinite possibility, that divine spark that we all talk about so many times, that we talk about very often. And it is through the returning to awareness of this 3D, 3.5D illusory reality that we begin to forget. Now, is the forgetting intentional? That's a whole nother show. Is the forgetting necessary? A whole nother show. But as we return from that place, call it heaven, call it the Guff, call it the one main soul, whatever it is you wish to call it the Brahma mind, source consciousness, and we begin to become aware of, let's say, the universe, the entirety of the universe. Then underneath that, we become aware of our own Milky Way galaxy. We become aware of planets and stars and what they do and their relationship with each other and their energy and how it influences each other. Then we return and see the planet, we see the region, and finally we incarnate into this body. We are still that piece of that source consciousness within this physical form, within this physical body. With that comes a whole nother set of rules. A lot of times there's a lot of confusion when it comes to source consciousness, higher dimensional thinking, etc., that we must either maintain that or that the same rules apply in that higher frequency, higher vibrational reality that apply here on planet Earth. Well, it couldn't be farther from the truth. The reality is that like any environment, there is going to be different limitations, capabilities, and different laws of physics or metaphysics, whatever it is that you wish to call that. And within that, we must learn to, how shall we say, to thrive. We must learn to be able to thrive. Now, once we incarnate into a physical form and once we incarnate into a physical body, of course, we have mind, we have thought, and as we grow older, that mind is filled with, call it, environmental programming, environmental information that is absorbed into our subconscious mind. And within those experiences and within those perceptions, it stays within our subconscious mind, and that dictates, or it can dictate if we allow it, how do we react to things? How do we perceive reality? What do we perceive as right and wrong? What do we perceive as good and bad, up and down? In other words, we've now separated from the divine and we are living in contrast reality. We are now living in positive, negative, male, female, up, down, and opposites. So with all of that, it can become difficult for us to interpret not only our own lives, but interpret our place in this world. If we have a good foundation, if we have a good connection to our higher selves and a good connection to the understanding of higher conscious thinking, and even if we don't, there is something within us that tells us that when things are not going right, when they're not going right for us, when they're not going right for our community, and when they're not going right for our planet, we can feel there's something off. And now, at this time of our human history, we are certainly feeling a bit of a madness going on, a bit of a, how shall we say, a bit of polluted energy that is just filling the world. And I don't mean that in a negative way. This is an awareness that we have in order for us to become aware of our own inner higher conscious self. Everything, and this is very cliche, but everything happens for a reason. So many of us are running around like our chickens, chickens with their head cut off, trying to make it better, trying to fix it, putting out fires within our own lives, putting out fires in the political landscape, in the social pattern, the social landscape of our so-called civilized society. And we're trying to come to grips with this flux, this state of change that our planet and our world is going through at the current moment. In other words, we're trying to find our place in this mad, mad world, which is why I chose this topic. So what is our place in this mad, mad world? Again, it comes to, it all reverts back to, or I shouldn't say reverts back to, but it comes to the point where we must remember where we came from. Where did we come from? We are spirits incarnate in a physical body. We are within this planet Earth 3D, 3.5D, scientists are calling it now, paradigm. We are living in a, again, another cliche, a lower frequency, a lower vibrational reality. But if we can remember that we are source consciousness incarnate into this physical body and begin to create dialogue, become comfortable with the dialogue of the source within us, within that divine spark that is within us, if we allow ourselves to have a dialogue with that, I call it communicating with your higher self, communicating with your guides, whatever it is, whatever words work for you. And we're going to get to words in a second. If we begin to have a dialogue with that source consciousness, then that source consciousness will guide us. Now the question is, are we going to trust it? Will we trust the intuition when our intuition tells us that our place in this world is to bring comfort to those who are suffering? Are we going to pay attention to our higher self and our intuition if we are told we are to, I don't know, help smash the patriarchy? Whatever it is, we all have a calling, and that is the point here. Within this mad world, we have all come here and have chosen to incarnate at this very peculiar time in history, this very mad world. We chose to come here, and there's a reason for that. We are here to play a part of that story, the story of human history, the story of the evolution of human consciousness, hopefully. And in order for us to do that, we have to understand the concept of contrast and knowing what we don't want, hence the madness in this world. Through the inner dialogue with our higher selves, with our source consciousness, by tapping into that intuition, we will find our place. Now, I know that might make it sound like I'm saying, oh, you've got this grand calling and you're going to save the earth and whatnot, etc., etc. Yes, you might be one of the larger figures that have the ability to help awaken thousands or millions of people around the world. That would be wonderful. But even if you are not one of those larger voices, even if you're not one of those big global societal change makers, you are still a change maker. You are still a piece of this particular puzzle, even if that is in changing the way that you live your life, in becoming more mindful in your day-to-day activities, if you are creating an example for your friends and your family, even if that is 2 people, even if it's 1 person who you help and assist to pull their heads out of this muck, out of this illusory madness that we have decided to come and incarnate in, you are making a difference. It doesn't have to be a big difference. Just you being here, just you watching this webcast is making a difference. So let's talk about how do we develop this dialogue with our inner self, with our higher conscious self, with our source consciousness. Well, in order to do that, and I'm not going to have time to go over everything today, I'm hoping that I'll be able to give you some tools today to help develop some of that. But in order for us to be able to develop our dialogue with our source consciousness, it's important that we begin to be aware of the inner dialogue that is already at play. When you wake up in the morning, what is the first thing you think? What's the first thing you think of in the morning? Do you think, oh my God, that alarm, I'm freaking out. Oh, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Right there, you've started your inner dialogue for the day. Right there, you have started your inner dialogue for the day. You get up, you get out of bed, you go brush your teeth, you have inner dialogue this whole time. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, you probably have some kind of inner dialogue, either reflecting back what I'm saying to you, or critiquing what I'm saying to you, or figuring out how what I'm saying to you is fitting into your perception of your personal reality. There is always an inner dialogue, is what I'm trying to get across here. You constantly have inner dialogue. Now, is that inner dialogue helpful and productive to you creating that source consciousness dialogue, that dialogue with your higher self, that dialogue with the divine spark within you? Or is that inner dialogue reminding you how broke you are, how late you are, how fat you are, how skinny you are, how old you are, how young you are, how disturbed you are, how depressed you are, how happy you are? Is it constantly chasing something? Is it constantly motivating you to react to the world around you? Or is that inner dialogue saying, today's going to be a great day. Today, you are going to change the world. Today, you're going to, I don't know, plant a garden. In other words, is that inner dialogue supporting you in your efforts? Your inner dialogue is the dialogue that you are with most of the time. You can watch TV, you can be around friends and family, you can listen to me, but 90% of the day you're having inner dialogue. What is that inner dialogue like? And today all I'm offering is for you to become aware of that inner dialogue. If you become aware of that inner dialogue, you may choose to begin to change that inner dialogue. I can only share with you what I've done. And one of the things that I have done, one of the tools that I've utilized, is that first thought in the morning. What is that first thought in the morning? In my past, yes, waking up was almost like being slammed into a human body every morning. Like, oh my God, I'm in this human body again. I'm in this human form. Oh, what are we going to do? You know. And I chose that. Many, many years ago, I chose that my first thought of the day is going to be something positive. So what I've done is I got rid of that horrible alarm clock that makes that horrible buzzing noise. Who wants to be shocked out of a deep sleep? Who wants to be shocked into this 3D plane of existence? Get rid of that noisy, stupid alarm clock. Figure out another way to wake up gently. What I did is I found an old song that I really like, and I'll share it with you. You might giggle, or you might say, that's a great song. WEBCAST, Mamas and the Papas, It's Getting Better. It's Getting Better by the Mamas and the Papas. And I have it at a level on my phone where it just kind of vibrates, and the vibration, I hear the vibration, and then by the time they get to the first chorus, I'm wide awake. And I'm usually smiling. So that's just one thing you can do to start the path to having that positive dialogue throughout your day. Does it sound like I'm talking about positive affirmations? Absolutely. Positive affirmations are all about inner dialogue and what dialogue you're having within your day-to-day consciousness. One of the goals, I'm guessing, one of the goals for you and one of the goals for me is to live a peaceful life, to live a happy life, to live in a happy world. In order for us to be able to do that, we have to learn, we have to relearn, we must relearn what happiness is and what peace is. But in order to do that, one of the things that we must do is to have peaceful thoughts, to have positive, happy thoughts. I know, again, that might sound a little bit new agey, but doesn't it make sense? If we want peace in our lives, if we want to live in a peaceful world, wouldn't it make sense that our inner dialogue was peaceful? Imagine if our inner dialogue was peaceful, positive, uplifting, empowering 24 hours a day. Imagine if your inner dialogue was positive, uplifting, 24 hours a day. Now, imagine if that same positive, uplifting, empowering inner dialogue 24 hours a day was in everyone's mind. Imagine that. People weren't shaming themselves. Imagine living in a world where people aren't afraid. People aren't reacting to situations around them that perhaps they may not have any control over. Imagine your life not being afraid. Imagine you being the master of your thoughts. And imagine a world where everyone is the master of their thoughts. So no, positive affirmations are not a fluffy concept or not some new agey thing. If we're going to have a peaceful world, if we are going to live peaceful lives, we must create inner peace. We create inner peace through peaceful inner dialogue. It becomes a habit. Kindness becomes a habit. Peace becomes a habit. Self-empowerment becomes a habit. So just become aware of what you're saying to yourself. One of the things that can hold us back, one of the obstacles that we do have being in this particular human body, living in this 3.5D reality vibratory world, is the mind, the ego. The ego is a tool, right? I always say the ego is a wonderful tool, but it's a terrible master. It gets you to work on time. It tells you when you're feeling good. It tells you when you're feeling bad. But unfortunately, what the ego does is it also overanalyzes. And I'm hoping that what I'm going to share with you now is going to be a little bit of a tool to help you not to overanalyze that communication with your higher self or your source consciousness, to not constantly overanalyze what your intuition is telling you. So, as you know, many of you might have seen that I was recently on the old Art Bell show, the Midnight in the Desert, with I forgot the gentleman, the new host, but he had asked me, how do you know, because I was telling him about the shamanic vision quest, and he was like, oh, well, you took a psychedelic, how do you know that's real and you weren't just, hallucinating or whatnot? And I was like, well, you just know. You just know. And I don't know if that was a good enough answer, but I shared with him this anecdote, which I've shared with many of you before. And it's a story of God and Satan. And God and Satan are walking down an old, a street somewhere in downtown, wherever you live. And it's dark out, and God and Satan are walking down this alley, and down at the end of the alley, they see this bright golden light, this tiny little bright golden light. And God nudges Satan and says, look, truth. And Satan says, here, give it to me. I'll organize it. That's a great analogy of what our brain does when we are feeling, especially something, and I'll use the term loosely, like a paranormal, supernatural experience, when our intuition is communicating with us. We tend to overanalyze. In my book, and by all means you're welcome to analyze my book, but in my book it says here, and this was the first thing that one said in the book, and there's a reason for that. It says, the words in the book are intended to be read as feeling and emotion versus thought and word. Now what that means is that when you are having a divine experience, for lack of a better term, allow yourself to experience it. If you are feeling that intuitive inkling, that intuitive nudge, allow it to happen. Stay in that moment and trust it. If you begin to analyze it, all of a sudden you've lost the moment. And that's what that story of God and Satan is, and that's what the words of one are in the book. How many times, and I've done this, and I'm sharing this because I have done that. For example, how many times have you, a good example, a movie. You went and saw this movie, and while you're watching the movie, you really enjoyed the movie, and you're like, wow, I don't know, let's say like The Avengers or something like that, and you're like, wow, this is so great. Oh my God, look at the special effects, this is so good. And you leave the movie and you're so excited about the movie, and you're like, God, that was so good, and you're telling all your friends, and you talk one of your friends to go see it with you. You're like, I'll go see it with you. It was so good, I'll go see it. I'll see it again, I'll see it with you. And you take your friend to the movie, and you're so concerned about them experiencing what you experienced the first time you saw the movie, that that you're nudging them like, oh, wait till this part. And you're so busy worrying about their experience of the movie that you are no longer experiencing the movie. You get what I'm saying? We must learn to trust again. We must relearn, get back into the habit of allowing experiences to happen as they are happening. And I'm basically talking about powerful, spiritual, paranormal, psychic, whatever you want to call it, source consciousness types of experiences, and just trust them. And just know that they are a moment. And that moment cannot be relived. That moment can never really be defined. Great example, Samadhi. And yes, please watch that movie. Parts 1 and 2 are out. Samadhi. It's on my website, and it's also on the publisher's website, or the director's website. The definition of Samadhi in of itself is that the moment you define Samadhi, you've lost Samadhi. The same thing happens with your dialogue with your higher self, your dialogue with source consciousness. The moment you begin to try to define what it is, put labels on it, instead of just allowing yourself to be present within that moment and to trust that experience that you are going through. Only you are having that experience. Only you are having that experience. It's going to be difficult for you to express that to other people. Especially if you're concerned that they're going to tell you you're crazy, or you're not, you're not following society's rules, Allow yourself the permission, and allow yourself not to have to analyze it at that particular moment. That is when you will begin to develop that habit of trusting intuition, communicating with higher self, and reconnecting with source consciousness. Now, with all of that said and done, a lot of people have a misunderstanding that once we have that connection, we must always follow it. That we must always stick to the higher dimensional awareness, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it's going to be for everybody, and I'm going to make it happen. No, that's not the way it is for everybody, and you're not going to make it happen for everybody. We must allow the people that we love, we must allow the people in our lives, and those who might be curious, beginning to have those spiritual experiences, to have them at their own pace. I've seen, and I used to be one of these people back when I had my I'll call it part 2 of my awakening, when we had the GIC and all of that. We were, remember, wake up, sheeple, wake up, sheeple. You're not going to wake sheeple up by calling them sheeple or telling them to wake up. You're going to do the opposite. Your experiences are your experiences and yours alone. Do not judge other people through the eyes of your experience. Do not force other people to believe what you believe. That's not what this is all about. The whole idea is to create a sovereign mind, that we all have our own mind, that we all have our own experience, that we all are awakened beings. Awakened beings have sovereign minds. They are not manipulated. They are not judged. They are not antagonized into waking up. We have to be the example. So anyway, with that, I'm going to leave you with this little tool. For the next week, until the next broadcast, for the next week, what I'd like you to do is remove one phrase. It's 2 words, but it's one phrase. And move it out, remove it of your inner dialogue. I need. I need. Stop saying I need in your mind for the next week. Just for 7 days. Try it. Be aware how many times you say I need. I need to get up. I need to get to work. I need to. I need to. I need to. You don't need to do anything. Stop driving yourself crazy. So do me a favor for the next week. No, I need. Just I am. I am getting up to go to work. I am running late. I am going to pick up my kids. I am going to the grocery store. I am going to meditate and be mindful. All right? All right, everybody. I will see you next week. Until then, have a wonderful week. I love you very, very much. Bye-bye.